We're in the sugya of Glatt kosher meat. And we went through Rashi's shita that when you see a sircha, which is one of these adhesions, when you do a post-mortem on an animal that was shechted, and you look at the lung and its attachments to the wall of the chest wall, according to the Rashi, if you see a lesion, it's a result of a perforation in the lung. Tosfos, on the other hand, holds that a sircha can develop when there's no perforation, as it may result from liquids that gather there, like through inflammation. And the reason why a sircha renders the animal treif is that it will ultimately become punctured. It may not be punctured now, but you have to worry as it grows that it will be a puncture. Says Tosfos, V'hayanir lefarish, the regila sircha lava b'chol mokum b'reya below neket. You could see an adhesion in the surface, even in a lung that has not been punctured. Because remember, we've understood that when the lung is punctured, that's a treifa. If the lung is not punctured, it's not a treifa. But he says this sircha can be seen even in a place where the reya is not punctured. Because it's a place where liquids have gathered there. And when you see two lobes of the lung that are adhered to each other, that are not contiguous, right? No, it's normal for two pieces of lung that are next to each other to be adhesed. But if you have, let's say, a piece here, a piece on this side, and this piece got adhered to that third piece, that's what it means, shelo kasidram. Hainu mishum shesofa liisparek. When you see that kind of connection, that connection is destined to tear apart. The choshev k'nekuva kevin shesofa linoke. That will lead to a perforation. So, despite the seriousness with which you see these Rishonim treated as sircha, it's not clear that all lesions are considered problematic. Some claim that if one gently rubs a sircha and it dissolves, that's a lesion that would not be problematic. That it was a perforation, according to Rashi, or that it would have caused a perforation in the future, according to Tosfos. It means if you rubbed it and it went away, it's not the kind of sircha that Rashi and Tosfos were concerned about. But other Rishonim protested against shochtim, who tried to rub these lesions they found in the lungs with their hands in order to dissolve them. Because remember, the butchers or the shochtim had a vested interest in trying to say that this was not a sircha that rendered the animal treif. So the Rashba was one of those who was concerned about that. And he argues that such actions should not be allowed. Sheilat Od, says the Rashba, that where the Chachamim said it's prohibited if you see a sircha in that place. Could the butcher, the shoichet, rub the sircha with his fingers, liros, and if it dissolves, nachshirota would be kosher. If he should gam bezenechleku yesh matir v'oisem ma'aser v'yesh oiser. That was the question that was asked to the Rashba, or the Rashba, in his shuvas, he would design his own shilas. So gam bezeh echol ben advorim shetzrichim atem lisrachek mimenu harbe. He says this you should stay away from. Va'anu ga'arnu harbe v'misha osakei. He would yell and scream at shoichim who did this. And if a butcher would continue to do it even after we warned him, nisalek also we would fire him from his position. He says we never saw in the Talmud, those of us who've learned Daf Yomi, many times the Gemara will give us an eitzah. It will say, if you do this and this in practical action, and something doesn't happen, it's not a problematic issue. So the Rashba time is that we don't see anywhere in the Talmud where it said, okay, you should rub the sircha, and the sircha goes away, it's not problematic. We didn't have a Talmudic source for it. V'lo yadanu lo ikar. We don't know where the butchers came up with it. Yesh mishmush etzbo shafilu arei v'hakan konos yimachu b'kach. For example, you could squeeze it so hard that the whole thing would dissolve. So it doesn't have really a standard criteria to measure. This guy's going to rub it harder. This guy's going to rub it softer. It's not something we can rely on. So the Rashba rejects that. However, the Ramah, who, as we know, as we've seen many times, is more machmir, here he permits doing so for the reason that if it can be successfully removed, that it is in fact an indication that it's not a true sircha, which has a true perforation of the lung below it. Although he agrees that this is a significant leniency, he notes that it was widely accepted in his locale. Remember, the Ramah lived in Krakow, so it was accepted in Poland. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch Yeridea there. Wherever they prohibited, if there was a sircha there, that's the adhesion. It doesn't mean if it's very thin, like a hair. It could be as very thick and as big as your thumb. And not like the ones who try to get rid of it with your hand. And if it does dissolve, we lean towards being makel. But he says whoever presses down and uses this kula, it's not acceptable and it's like trefus. Says the Ramah, there are those that are makel and matir. If the person by squeezing it can make it go away, if it dissolves, it was probably not a true perforation. It's just pus. Says the Ramah, you recognize it's a leniency, meaning Eastern European countries, Poland and anything west of it and east of it. You don't have to protest. He says they have what to rely on. One who checks it has to be Yir Shemayim. He shouldn't use too much force. Because otherwise he will detach it. You can see the Ramah died in 1572. It says he was well versed in philosophy and astronomy, and he died at the age of 47. It's interesting that it says here that he was well versed in philosophy. My Rebbe, Rabbi Gruman, who also got a PhD in philosophy, told me that in one of the seifers of the Ramah called the Oilas Re'iyah, he said that all of the philosophical teachings of Plato had been inherited by him from Achitophel. Remember, Achitophel was the advisor of David HaMelech. So you're talking about 500 years prior. But that knowledge of Plato talked about the soul and the famous, he gave a parable of the cave. And a lot of the philosophical teachings of Plato, according to the Ramah, originated in Jewish hands. That means from Achitophel, who was David HaMelech's advisor. This is an interesting note that you can see, because the Ramah was a philosopher, and he knew general philosophy, secular philosophy as well. So this dispute, comes out that the Shulchan Aruch was the Maran Beis Yosef, of Yosef Karo, was machmir regarding a sirch. He did not allow the butchers to do this test by squeezing on it, and the Ramah was mekel. So this dispute between the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah serves as the basis for different opinions regarding this issue between Ashkenazim and Sfardim, reported by Rav Ovadia Yosef and the Yechavidas. According to the Sephardic practice, one is obligated to eat meat from an animal whose lungs were totally smooth, which we call in Yiddish glatt, or chalak in Hebrew. Because we see, Shulchan Aruch didn't allow, if you had a sircha, that when you have a sircha, it's not smooth. You put your hand in, and if it's not, you got to be able to put your hand between the lung and the chest wall, and it's got to be completely smooth. If you put your hand in there and you feel bumps, and you feel, particularly if there was a connection between the lung and the chest wall, then it's not smooth. So the Sfardim have to be machmir to only eat what's called glatt meat. On the other hand, the strict Ashkenazi halacha is that the consumption of meat that is not glatt is permitted. Nevertheless, many Ashkenazim are also particular to eat only meat that is glatt, as the Roim himself says, that eating meat that is not glatt is considered a big leniency. Says the Chavedas, Asher al kain kol acharid l'dvar Hashem tzarich lizar me'od b'davar hazeh, shelo lechol ela basar chalak o glatt. L'bal yikoshel chas v'sholem b'chashash yitzur treifa. L'das bar al shulchan aruch shekibanu ha'roisa. Because if you don't eat glatt, you are in a chashash that you're eating treifas, according to the way the Shulchan Aruch they follow. U'mitzvah rabba v'choyva kedush al tamidei chachamim v'rabbanim sheb'doreinu Hashem aleim yichyu la'ores ha'am b'drashaseyim lazir la'kol yochlu basu she'en alav chotemes chalak o glatt, that they should not eat meat that's not glatt. V'yadu sh'arbei ma'od gam me'achenu Ashkenazim yirei Hashem v'chosh v'yishon nizarim ma'od b'zeh. So many Ashkenazim are nizar of this. In addition, the Gra also adopts the more stringent position of the Shulchan Aruch, as evident from the fact that he quotes the Tshuva of the Rashba, discussed above as a response to Ramo's leniency. Remember, tonight we learned the Rashba that he was machmir. He said, "Sof davar al tishmalakim b'davar b'shum tzad klal." Says the Biur Gra there by Lamed Tes, which is the sugya there in your Deya. Yesh matir l'mashmesh aval Rashba b'tshuva simin shin dalid. Right? You notice they don't say shin dalid because that's shade. So they say dalid shin. Right? They don't want to invoke a demon. The position of the OU and most major kosher agencies today in the United States is to maintain a glatt standard for all meat under their certification. This is explained in the following excerpt from the OU Kosher website. Shulchan Aruch describes many types of adhesions in intricate detail. Yoredea 39. The overwhelming majority of which renders the animal a treif. The Ramah concludes the discussion about lung adhesions with a description of the method of peeling and testing many types of adhesions, thereby resulting in many more animals determined to be kosher. The Ramah himself expressed certain hesitations about aspects of this leniency, but because it had gained wide acceptance and had a firm basis, he ruled that it could be followed. However, he cautions that the peeling and testing must be performed by an exceedingly God-fearing individual. Because this peeling is mentioned and approved by the Ramah, but not by the Mechaber, Sfardim who follow the Mechaber are required to eat only glatt meat, as defined by the Mechaber. The Mechaber is also the author of the Beis Yosef, right, who is the commentary on the Tur. Therefore, such meat is termed glatt, or in Israel, chalak Beit Yosef. So when you hear them say, "Oh, it's a Beit Yosef shchita," meaning it's a glatt, that's because the Beit Yosef is the Shulchan Aruch, is Rabbi Yosef Karo. For Ashkenazim, there's a tradition that a small, easily removable adhesion is defined as a lower class of adhesion known as a rear, right? A rear is like when there's just pus there, and that the presence of up to two such small, easily removable adhesions still qualifies the animal as glatt, according to Ashkenazi tradition. So I just wanted to point out to everyone here that important statement, that when we eat glatt, the Ashkenazi glatt standard is a little less. We're allowed to have up to 2 rearim, and as long as they're only rearim, it would still be certified as glatt. So that there's more Ashkenazi shchita will end up with more animals that are potentially kosher. Eating glatt is a worthy stringency that avoids potential problems raised by the Ramah's controversial leniency. It should be emphasized that the Ramah's ruling is certainly legitimate, and in theory, non-glatt meat, if inspected properly, is 100% kosher for Ashkenazim. I don't have to remind the people who lived here in Los Angeles 50 years ago there must have been at least 30 or 40 kosher butcher stores. There were 2 Glatt butcher stores that sold Glatt kosher meat. And yes, certainly there were people who bought from those establishments, but the whole community didn't. I would say the vast majority of the community bought their meat in a regular kosher butcher store. Now, I would say when the Kollel moved in here in 1977, and frankly, when Richie Schuster, who was president of Young Israel at that time, he and Rabbi Teichman, there was a whole revolution. And at that time, virtually all the kosher meat that was bought by pretty much the whole Orthodox community turned Glatt. Sidney, do you agree with my historical analysis?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Exactly. Huh?
You can hear me, yes.
I can hear you. Right, Sidney? That was the story. Exactly?
Yeah, I mean, there were times where there was no meat whatsoever, too.
And there was times when they had to come in from Denver and
Right.
Kansas City, whatever. So we understand why that is, because the Ramos said it's okay. What has happened is that the Orthodox community moved to a higher standard. So today the OU and most other kosher organizations will certify meat that is Glatt, will only certify meat that is Glatt.
Bernie, are you saying that every Ashkenazi would eat Sephardi shchita, but not every Sephardi would eat Ashkenazi shchita?
Absolutely. Exactly what we've said tonight. Exactly. That there's a higher stringency. They can't have, and they won't accept the rearing, the Sephardim. It's got to be completely smooth. And we can allow up to 2 rearing. The rearing are not sirchas. We don't allow sirchas at all. It's only if it's been determined that it's a rear that it still stays and it still stands. But if you have more than 2 rearim, we won't accept that. Ernie, Ernie, what Sidney says is absolutely correct.
Quick question, Ernie. I mean, maybe a stupid question, but we're only talking about beef. We're not talking about fowl, right?
Hang on. If you look at the next page, we're going to deal. A good question. Right now, we're dealing with beef. Okay,
I see. Thank you.
What the din about fowl? We're gonna see very very shortly. But not for Sephardi, maintains that, meaning the lung is 100% smooth. Let me just see, concerning how one particular Ashgach in Israel handles this issue, you can see a source in the footnote. In other countries, including Israel, there is a large percentage of meat that is not Glatt at all. Mm-hmm. Right? It has more than 3 rearim, or has sirchas, right? But if they check it and the sircha goes away, they would say that is kosher. Remember, even if you shecht an animal and you find a sircha and you find that it's got an nekuva in the lung, then that's not kosher. It's a treif. But there are animals that are not Glatt. They check them. They have sirchas, but they go away. That would not be certified Glatt, but that would be certified kosher. That's what they're talking about here, that there's a lot of meat in Israel that's not Glatt. So Sephardim as well as Ashkenazim that are careful about keeping Glatt must be careful to check the meat purchased to determine whether it is Glatt. And there's some other, there's some articles that you can cite from below if you want more detail on that issue. Is it permitted for those who are careful to eat only Glatt to eat from the dishes of those who are not careful to eat Glatt? In other words, do those who eat only Glatt treat non-Glatt meat as if it were treif and require all the dishes in which non-Glatt meat is cooked to be kosher before using? According to the Sefer Kosher Yalkut Yosef, the stringency of Glatt is not taken to that extreme. And one would certainly be allowed to eat non-meat food cooked in dishes that were used to cook non-Glatt meat. Means because you wouldn't eat the meat there, but you wouldn't make them kosher there. It's similar. It's similar to the gebrocht business, where even the people who eat gebrochts, they eat on the 8th day of Pesach. They eat on their own kalim, not gebrochts. So why don't they kosher their kalim? Because it's not considered chametz. It's just it's a stringency. Same thing here. You can eat there as long as you don't eat the meat there because you're makbid on Glatt. Like you eat noodles in a pot that the guy was cooking his non-glatt meat in. But that's not a problem. You can eat any non-meat dish if you're makbid on the glatt. And so Yalkut Yosef as well says the same thing. Misha Masarech Eitzel Chaver Shena Makbid Bachilas Chalak Dafka. Mutter lo lechol as atavshil mishnis bashlu bekelim shebishlu ben basar kosher. Aval im bishlu betoch kedera achaz basar kosher im orez v'chadome. Ein lechol as ha'orish nis bashlu ma basar kosher. Shetam ke'ikar d'oraisa. So he says, now he makes a difference. He says you can take noodles and cook it in a pot, but if you cook the rice, if you're at a home and somebody cooked the non-glatt meat with rice, and then they serve you the rice, you shouldn't eat the rice because tam ke'ikar, the flavor of that meat. And if you don't think if on your standard you want to eat glatt kosher meat, you can't eat the rice either. You understand? Everybody understand that distinction?
Yeah. Where did we get that? Where did the Sfadim get that the Shtei Sichas is not good for them? Where did they get that from?
Walter, we just went through Masech Chulin, and Rashi and Tosfos and the Rashba, where we explained the sircha, that the sircha has a nekev in the lung. One of the Yud Ches Treifas is a hole in the lung.
I understand, but where did they get when they had two, or what's the next thing called?
Oh, the Ashkenazim, that if you go into the sugya there, you'll see that if it's just a rear ba'alma, where it's not an adhesion, it's just pus, it's in the Shulchan Aruch. Huh?
Where did the Sfardim get this hakpoda? Where did they get this chumrah from that they can't even do the rear ba'alma?
They got it from the Shulchan Aruch, who said, Kol hanoya ken kilo Michael treifas liYisrael. The Shulchan Aruch said if the butcher tries to squeeze the sircha, he's not allowed to do it. Like he follows the Rashba, so he got it from the Rashba, who was machmir there. Okay. And since Sfardim follow the base Yosef, that's your answer. That's the source goes through there.
Was that the problem with the Hebrew national hot dogs? Remember there were Hebrew national hot dogs years and years ago?
Yeah. So it was not glatt. That was not glatt. But as I said, in Los Angeles, vast majority of the Orthodox Jews did not eat glatt. There were Hasidic, the rabbis ate it, and there were many families that bought meat only from those glatt kosher things because they had a tradition. Maybe they came from Hungary or they came from Hasidic families where they ate glatt meat. Because that was all.
Nibbler's was not glatt. Nibbler's was not glatt in those days.
So yes, Hebrew National was. Some people even question the whole kashrus of Hebrew National. That's a different story.
Come on, stop there. Elazar can tell you that Hebrew National. Elazar was.
No, Hebrew National. There were people who ate Hebrew National. Hebrew National had it was not glatt, but those who ate non-glatt meat would eat Hebrew National as well. Absolutely. But I think the standard changed as we discussed the history. Now, what about, is there such a thing like Chaim Eisenberg asked about glatt kosher chickens? The previous discussion regarding whether meat must be glatt or not pertains entirely to animals such as cows. By contrast, it is generally assumed that chickens do not have to be checked for problems with the lungs, since the lungs of a chicken almost never contains lesions or perforations. So remember, this had to do with chazaka and rov. Since by cows, there was a significant percentage of the cows that had sirchas, so it became noyeg that you had to check every animal for that trait. All the other things don't have to be checked because it's very uncommon. Like, we don't check the intestines of every animal to make sure they don't have a hole in the intestine. It's only because there's a certain percentage, a high percentage of animals, of the cows, that have lung problems, so you have to check the lungs. But you don't have to check for all the various traphis. Is there a hole in the heart? Is there a hole in the intestines? They don't do a complete post-mortem examination on the animal. They just check the lungs, but not anything else, because it's based on rov. So since rov chickens, it was known they don't have problems in their lungs, they don't have to be checked either. And this is the accepted practice in the United States and most other countries today. Nevertheless, the Chassam Sofer writes that if there's a reason to believe that a chicken's lung may be treif, one should inspect it. Let's say let's say that we had a fever, whatever reason you had a suspicion that there might be a problem with the lung, then you have to check it. Emes Nachon, says the Chassam Sofer, the Ba'ofa Nidras. Let's say the chicken had been clawed by a wolf. And now the din is, if an animal was clawed, you have to observe it for 24 hours. You can't shecht it. You got to wait 24 hours to make sure it stays alive. If it stays alive for 24 hours, it's assumed that it was not damaged to the point that it's a trait. So the Ofa Nidras V'Shomeis Le'ez, Amrina de Tzorch Bedika. You can shecht it, but then it needs to be checked. Because there's a Havamina that because it was clawed, that maybe it punctured the lung. So you got to check it. Boy lon b'masechta beitza, daf lamed dalet, imuter l'shochta b'yontif. And could you shecht such a chicken on yontif? Because Rabbeinu Nisim, that was fake d'oraisa l'shochta b'yontif. It's a suffix d'oraisa to shecht it on yontif. Shmami na, the sphere le'laram, the ofa nidras boy bedika b'natoira. So you see, it's a Torah requirement to do the bedika. It's not part of the rove, where the rove chickens are not damaged because this already was clawed. We leave the chazaka that it was kosher before then. Means if you have the ability to check it, you can check it. You should check it mirabanan. So according to some sofer, since the bird in question was clawed by a predator, there is good reason to believe it's a trait, and one must inspect it, either on a deraisa level or at least on a drabanan level. This is relevant in Israel today, where a significant number of chickens are found to have defects in the lungs that render them trephous. Different theories are offered as to why there are significant numbers of trephous among the chicken in Israel, due to defects in the lung, including the desert climate in some places, or Newcastle disease, which is a bird virus. As a result, it would seem that perhaps chickens in Israel should ideally have their lungs opened and checked following the shechita, depending on the exact percentage of trephous that are found. It says even if the lungs are checked, it is not entirely clear what types of defects would constitute a trait in the chicken's lung. This is one of the differences between the higher level hashgachos in Israel, where many or all of the chickens are indeed checked for defects in the lung. And most of the standard Rabbanut hashgachot, where only a small amount of chickens are checked as a sample. That means in Rabbanut shechita, they check some of the chickens, not all of them. But in the higher hashgachot, they check all of them. In America, we don't have this issue. And therefore, there is no checking of the chickens in America. They're all considered glatt because the rove is that they don't have lung disease. But in Israel, apparently, it's a problem.
Is the Rabbanut shechita considered the lower level of?
Go ahead, Bernie.
Yeah, no. When you mentioned the Rabbanut, is Rabbanut considered the lower level of
Yes.
strictness?
Yes. When they mean like Satmar, when they say when they go the higher hashgachot, that's like the Eda Charedis, in Yerushalayim. And there's Satmar Shchita, and there's other higher than the Rabbanut. So for this reason, the Sefer Kashos recommends purchasing chickens in Israel bearing one of the higher level hashgachot. Meaning, if you're one of those people that are makpid on glatt, and you want to be makpid on glatt wherever you are, so when you're in Israel, you should, if you're going to eat chicken, you should eat chicken from one of the higher hashgachot. If in general you don't eat glatt, then it's not an issue. Ha'ofadanim karim kfuim, that's frozen, rubam mefutamim, so they are fattened. Umitzuyim behem treifas v'chashashor shonot. So that's the one. There's because of that processing, that they get treifas. Alkein ein leknosam el hechsher yadua umochel mahadrin. You have to do it. You have to buy a higher hashgacha. Gedei lavtiach shekol shalavei hashchita habdika achshara v'shivuk nasu kedas v'kedin. Okay. By the way, for those who have children of a certain age, if you remember when you sent your children to seminary or to yeshiva, when they all came back, they all they were very makpid, were very not to eat rabbanut. They would, I guess, their rabbanim or their teachers would tell them to eat the higher level hashgachot. I never have. When I went to Israel, when I was in my teens, we ate Rabbanut. I had no problem with any of that. So again, there is just like there was a process in Los Angeles, there was a process in Israel too. Walter, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Frozen chickens in America, I don't have a problem with this hashgacha, right?
Right. The chickens in America do not have this problem.
No, but even the frozen ones, because it seems that in Israel, it just seems that the frozen ones are the ones that you really have to be makpid on. They're calling it treif.
No, it means they have to be checked. The higher level hashgachot in Israel, they just make sure to check every chicken, as opposed to just check a certain percentage of them. Yeah. He says like this.
Okay, you're not allowed to actually buy frozen chickens there. That's what he's saying.
He's saying for those who are makpid to eat glatt by beef, they should buy chickens on the higher hashgachot. Someone who's not makpid on glatt can eat regular Rabbanut chicken, because you understand it's not it's a level of the issue of, do you worry about the lung perforation in a chicken? In general, you don't. In Israel, they do, or they think that there's more. So that's why the difference is checking every chicken versus checking a certain percentage of those that are shechted. Then it says, it's not just sold frozen as fattened up. It refers to standard chickens raised for slaughter and commercial use, which are often referred to as factory farm chickens. These chickens are usually artificially enlarged to a degree much greater than they would grow naturally through specific types of feeding, as well as their ability to roam freely, leading to additional concerns of treifus that did not necessarily exist commonly in earlier times. So I don't know. I do not believe that Empire and the various kosher organizations in America check the lungs of the chicken like they do in Israel. That's why they're pointing out that this happens in Israel, not in America. Okay? Let's go on to liver, 197. Now again, I mean, when I was a kid, it was the post-war generation. Sydney will remember this too, maybe. Our parents wanted us to eat liver because they thought liver was healthy. It had a lot of iron, and just like they used to roast steaks, we would eat liver. It was a very common thing. I don't see today a lot of people eating liver anymore. We eat chicken liver, chopped liver. I guess some people use beef liver for chopped liver, but the whole eating, liver and onions, all that, that used to be, or liverwurst. It's not that noyig as much anymore. At least in my home.
I think just the opposite. It became more. It's a delicacy now. In those days, it was really tough to eat it, and now you see it in fancier places. Liver and onions is a gourmet.
Liver and onions. But you remember there was a time where our parents wanted us to eat liver.
Eat liver with fragua. Come on.
Yeah, no, that was terrible those days. I remember that.
No, but fragua is different liver.
No, not foie gras. They didn't have foie gras.
No, they didn't have foie gras. They had like real beef cow liver, which you had to go through this whole.
It actually looked like a liver. It's hard. It looked like a liver.
Yeah, but now they're not talking about beef liver. They're talking about fragua, where you go and it's a delicacy.
No. You're talking about regular liver.
A different halachic issue related to kosher meat preparation arises when dealing with liver. All other parts of an animal that are prepared as kosher are salted prior to cooking to remove all of the blood present. And we'll learn more about malicha and the requirements for malicha in the next segment. But there is one case where malicha is not effective in removing all of the blood, and that is liver. Since the liver is saturated with blood, standard halachic malicha does not suffice. That means normally what we do is you take a piece of meat, you salt it, and it actually is salted for 60 minutes, and it goes up a ramp. I was actually present in Toronto by Chai Chickens. I spent about 6 hours seeing about 8,000 chickens processed. And Rav Moshe was involved in creating a lot of these machines for Industrial Empire, checks 80,000 chickens a day. Chai was 8,000, but the other 80,000. So standard belicha, it went up a ramp for 60 minutes. Salt had to sit in it for 60 minutes. The sear had to be drained away. Then there has to be hadacha. You have to rinse it away. So there's a normal malicha process. That's a very standard process to get rid of the blood that's in our meat. But that process doesn't work for liver. Yalta, the learned wife of Rav Nachman, notes in the Gemara in Chulin that Hashem created a corresponding counterpart to every forbidden object in the world, so that there will be some similar item that is permitted. And she included liver with blood on her list of examples. That means she's going to give us now examples. You want to taste what chazer tastes like? Go eat this. You want to taste what liver with blood tastes like? Eat this. But that tells us that liver with blood is usher. Says, Amrle Yaltal Rav Nachman, Michte, called the Asr Lan Rachmana, every item that the Torah prohibited for us, Sharolon Kavase, it permitted, there is something permissible that we're allowed to see what it tastes like. Asr Lan Dama, Sharla Kveda. We are prohibited to eat blood, but we are permitted to eat liver. In some respects, it has the same taste. Nida, we're prohibited to live with our wives in a state of nidus. But sometimes we can live with our wives when they're bleeding, dam tohar. That means after a woman gives birth to a male, there are 7 days of tumah followed by 33 days of what's called demei tohar. By a female, it's 14 plus 66. Now, bisman hazeh, we don't treat those days as demei tohar, and we're not allowed to live with our wives, because our din is more machmir than the time of the Torah. But the times of the Torah, if on day 20, after a woman had given birth, if it had a certain type of quality and it was decided that it was demei tohar, you could live with your wife even if she was bleeding. So in a sense, you could sense what it's like to live with a woman who's a nida, because the Torah gave us demei tohar. Chelav behema. Now we know that there are prohibited fats in an animal. The greater omentum in the stomach, the fats over the liver, the fats over the kidney. This is prohibited chelev that the butcher has to get rid of, because if we eat a kazayis of chelev, we're over korex. Now only a behema, right, a domesticated animal, a cow, a sheep, a goat, is the chelev prohibited. Chelev chaya, for example, the chelev of a deer is permitted. Chelev of a non-domesticated animal was not prohibited. Only chelev behema. So you want to taste chelev? Go to Lavana used to sell venison, deer. Was a famous kosher restaurant in New York. I remember I once had deer venison there, and I bet you they even had some chelev of venison if you wanted to taste. Now, chazir, moicha de shibuta. There is a fish called the shibuta fish. The brains of a shibuta fish taste like chazir. Those of you who were at the OU did a halachic suda at Prime Grill here in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, maybe 10 years ago. Yaakov and I went to there. And they introduced all sorts of foods just to keep the Masorah alive. They had brought a shibuta fish from Syria, and people could eat and taste the shibuta fish at that meal. I did not. Girusa, which is a certain non-kosher fish. Lishna de kavra, that's the tongue of another fish. So you want to know how that prohibited fish tastes like, you eat the tongue of that fish. Eishes ish, grusha b'chaye baila. That means you want to feel what it's like to live with a married woman. Technically, it's when you live with a divorcee. If you marry a divorcee and the divorcee's husband is still alive, I guess that's the closest thing you can come to an Eishes. Eishes ach ivama, right? You're not allowed to live with the wife of your brother. But if, God forbid, the brother should die and they had no children, you could have relations with your brother's wife. In fact, it was a mitzvah to do so. Goya, normally we're not allowed to live with a non-Jew, but we were permitted to marry a Yifas Toar. That if you took a woman in captivity, you had to have her hair grow long, her nails grow long, but you could live with a Yifas Toar. Now, Be'in and Lamechel Sar B'chalba. What if a person wants to have the taste of basar b'chalav? Omer Rav Nachman l'tabach is vikuli kachli. Prepare udder, right? The udder of the cow, the female udder where you get milk from. So that's the closest. It's saturated perhaps with some milk flavor. Now there's a certain one siman in Yoreh De'ah tells you how to kosher udder. There's a certain way of koshering it. And if you kosher it the right way, you can eat udder. By eating udder, you'll have that little bit of a flavor of basar b'chalav. So the Gemara here does not specify exactly how one may prepare the liver. And this is a subject to a dispute later in the Gemara as to whether the liver may be cooked or must be roasted, which is more effective in removing the blood. The halacha is that it must be roasted in the manner described by the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Ayin Gimel, HaKaved yesh bo ribui dam. Liver has a lot of blood. Lefichach lechatchila ein lo takon levasho al yedei melicha. You can't salt it. Elakaro shesi ve'eret. You have to tear it like a cross, or make an incision in it like a cross. Umeniach hitucho lamata, and the side of the liver that you made this incision in, that goes face down on the flame. Lamata v'tzoleh, and you roast it. She'eroi lachila. It's got to be roasted to the point that it's ready to be eaten. Then you can cook. Then you can cook it. So you roasted it and then cooked it. The Ramah adds in two places that it is customary to rinse the liver after you did this and place a small amount of salt on it prior to roasting. So you rinse it, put a little bit of salt on it before you roast it, and then rinse it again following the roasting. There are those that don't put any salt on it at all. The ain lishanos, that means they're talking about the regular way of doing malicha, where you laid a thick amount of salt on both sides. But rak yesh lemocha ktsas, k'sheitchuva b'shpud, once it's stuck to the spit, or then you salt it a little bit there. Then you rinse it with water after you roasted it, because the blood is going to have been drawn out by this roasting process. So you want to rinse it away. Miu im lo hiticha muteres, but if you didn't wash it away, it's also mutter, because that blood is not really prohibited blood once it comes out of the meat. He also says that some say you need to rinse it before the roasting. You need a little bit of salting. So the Ramah's approach has been accepted as the custom for Ashkenazim, and is usually mentioned where any rabbinic guidelines are given for koshering liver. With regard to the level of fire, one should use a medium level fire, as if it's too low, it will not get broiled. And if it's too high, the outside of the liver will get burned, while the inside will not get broiled sufficiently. This is also brought by the Sefer HaKashrus. Sort of be a middle flame. Coals that are been ignited. I think we should look at the process that Rav Moshe Heinemann goes through in koshering liver.
Ernie, just one question, please.
Yes.
If this is the custom with liver, you try to, because it's difficult to eliminate blood. How does lots of people like to eat other cuts of meat that are rare and are red, and you can see juices come out that usually will contain some blood in them?
No, Bernie, the meat that you're eating has already been salted. If it's been salted kedin for 60 minutes and you go through the process of hadacha before and hadacha afterwards, all the blood's been removed from that meat. So when you eat a rare piece of steak, you're eating, we call that meat juice. It's not blood. whatever is there is not halachic blood that would give you carbs. Now, so let's just go through this.
Excuse me, also, one question. I think also when you buy liver today from the butcher, he roasts it first. He salts it. He roasts and does the whole first step of desalting it, right?
Absolutely. You remember when our mothers would do it at home, or like our grandmothers. But today you get it from the butcher this way. Of course, all butchers sell you salted meat. The malicha has also been done. Many of you remember salting meat at home as well. So, but that was like customer service. At some point, the butcher started saying, "Oh, we will kosher the meat for you." That was like an extra service. Many times there were times where they didn't do that for you. But yes, liver is usually prepared already by the butcher that way. Koshering by broiling is done in the following manner. If a whole animal liver, beef or calf, is to be koshered, deep crisscross cuts should be made throughout the liver in various places. This will facilitate the flow of blood out of the liver. To this end, the cut should lie face down during the broiling. A more practical way of koshering cow or calf liver is to slice the liver into pieces of uniform thickness. If the liver is koshered in this fashion, crisscross cuts need not be made because they already cut it. Chicken liver or liver of other species of fowl can be broiled whole without cutting the surface.
They're small.
They're
small.
Small. Care must be taken that the gallbladder, which is green in color and cylindrical in shape, has been removed from the liver. Now, the liver, slices of liver that is to be koshered, should be thoroughly washed off in cold water, placed on a grate of fireproof material. The grate must be constructed in such a way that it does not inhibit the free flow of blood or other juices from the liver. The blood and juices should drip or run to a place where they have no further physical contact with the liver. The liver is then lightly salted on both sides. It's customary to put at least the amount of salt that would give the liver good taste. The salting is used as an aid to the fire to facilitate extracting the blood. If it wants to use more salt, you can do it. However, salting the liver is not compulsory, and the broiling process can be accomplished without salt. Consequently, people who are restricted to a low-sodium diet may omit salting the liver because of their medical consideration. The salting step may only be omitted when koshering liver or meat through broiling. If meat is to be koshered through soaking and salting, then of course you can never exclude the salting process. Now, it's preferable to broil the liver on a fire source that is directly below the liver. If that's not feasible, one may broil liver from a heat source above the liver. Hence, it would be permissible to broil a liver in a broiler or an electric oven if that is the only broiling source available. If the oven or broiler is used for kosher food as well, care should be taken to assure that the blood does not splatter onto the oven or broiler cavity. Splatter blood will make the oven or broiler walls trafe. A practical solution is to place a pan under the rack or grate to catch the dripping blood and juices. The pan will become trafe. The rack or grate should not be used for anything except koshering liver unless proper kosherization procedures are employed to kosher the grates, period. Any utensil used in the broiling process, such as a fork, should be set aside and used exclusively for livers. It's a meritorious practice to burn the fork and all the utensils used in the broiling process in fire before the next time liver is to be koshered. It is customary to turn the liver slices during the broiling process from time to time to facilitate. Yes.
Sorry, is this only the blood of a liver is the only thing that's matara? Blood of another different animal, of an ox or whatever you cook
Every
it,
animal has liver.
altered it, would it make something trafe?
No, the blood of an ox is also trafe. Yes. What do you mean?
It's also matara for everything.
The liver of any animal has to be koshered this way. We saw that for a chicken, because it's small, you don't have to do cut it shesi area.
No, I understand. I'm just saying any blood which comes out of any animal is matare, whatever
Yes,
it.
absolutely. That in Melicha, we went through these dinim like you cannot believe, because the blood during the salting process, the blood that comes out is also trafes up the kalim that it's soaking in. Absolutely. But once our meat has been salted, the blood's gone. But the kalim that you use to salt the blood, that you have to be careful what you do with that blood that comes out.
So you have to rekasha those kalim?
Like he said, because over a period of time, like he said, he refires them each time he uses them to rekasher them.
Okay.
It is customary to turn the liver slices during the broiling process from time to time to facilitate more even and uniform broiling. It's also customary to broil liver until the outer juices have ceased flowing and the liver is dry on the outside. You don't have to burn it. The kosher liver is washed off under cold water 3 times in order to remove the salt that has absorbed the blood and any blood found on the outer surface of the liver. These procedures have been followed, and red juice exudes from the liver interior. Bernie, the liquid is not considered blood and is permitted to be eaten. That goes for steak as well. When the kosher liver is cut open, when they find the color of the interior liver is a shade of green, tan, light brown, pink, or deep brown. The only questionable color is deep brown, the color of unkoshered raw liver. This color indicates that the liver was not broiled thoroughly. The unkoshered deep brown part of the liver should be rebroiled or discarded. After the liver has been broiled and koshered, it is considered like any other piece of kosher meat, which can be fried or roasted in a kosher meat pot, pan, or roaster without any reservation. Furthermore, liver does not have to be broiled within 72 hours of kosher slaughter. If it was not broiled within this time, there are different halachic opinions whether one may cook, fry, or roast this liver after it has been kosher. It's also questionable whether one would be allowed to soak the liver in liquid 24 hours or more. That's called kavu. And a competent authority should be consulted. Also, if one used the regular soaking and salting koshering techniques on liver in error, you should also consult the halachic authority. Few pertinent points to keep in mind. It's common for blood and juices to run out of raw liver. The raw liver may not lie in this liquid for more than 24 consecutive hours. If it did, a Torah authority should be consulted about the liver plate and bowl. So what's going on is, if you let the liver sit in its blood for 24 hours, it will absorb it through the process of kavush. So just like we talked about, heating will transfer flavor into a kli. So kavush, if something sits in something for 24 hours, it also absorbs it. So that's why it's a problem for both the kli and for the meat itself. Then one may broil liver on a rotisserie spit, provided the liver is washed after it has been placed on the spit before broiling, and the rotisserie does not revolve constantly during the broiling process. The pieces of liver may be touching one another during the broiling process if so desired. Frozen liver should be completely thawed out before attempt to broil it. Otherwise, the liver will not be broiled all the way through. Now, what about preparing kosher fish? Preparing kosher fish is certainly significantly easier, involves far fewer questions than preparing kosher meat. The reason for this is that according to Gemara in Chulin, shechita is not required for fish. Dogim de lav ne shechita ninu minolan. In Chulin they say, how do you know fish don't need shechita? I leben mishum dichsiv. Hatson uvakar yishachet lahem. Im es kol degeh hayam yeyasef lahem. Ba'asifa ba'al masagi luhu. It's that son ubakar needs shechita, but fish only needs to gather. But the Gemara questions that derivation because Elameata gabi slav when the people wanted meat. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, okay, I'm going to send you the slav, the birds. Dichsiv, vayasfu et haslav. Hachanami delav b'shchita? Are you going to say that because they gathered the birds, they didn't have to shecht it? V'ha'amrit lepotra v'v'lo klumi efshar. You can't pater a slav to be eaten without anything. Shekvar hukash lebehema. Also, loksiv asiv v'mokum shchita dachrini. Because over there, it wasn't written there when it says vayasfu et haslav. It wasn't written in a pasuk, in a pasuk that compared and contrasted to something else. Here it said, that clearly showed that the method of how do you eat fish is you just gather it. You don't have to shecht it. Nevertheless, there are a few issues to be aware of concerning preparing kosher fish, mainly identifying and purchasing the fish. According to Torah, fish must have fins and scales. Et zeh tochlu mikol asher b'mayim, kol asher lo snapir b'kaskeses b'mayim. If it has fins and scales, Vayamim uvanchalim otam tochem. Says the Mishnah, kol sheyesh lo kaskeses yesh lo snapir. So it's a very interesting rule. Any fish that has scales automatically has fins. So you don't even have to look for the fins. If it's got scales, it has fins. There is no example of an animal that has scales and doesn't have fins. The opposite is not true. Right? There are fish that have fins but no scales. A shark, right? A whale, right? They are fish because the Chazal didn't understand the concept of mammals or not. Anything that swims in the ocean is a fish, right? But they're dog tome. They're non-kosher fish because they have no scales.
By the way,
So
you should know that I think Aish uses this as one of their proofs of the divine source for the Torah, the Torah Shabbat Peh. How could someone make that statement
and have it never be found false?
Right.
There's another. What's his name? Rabbi Slifkin. Sydney and I once took a 4-hour tour of the LA Zoo with Rabbi Slifkin. Sydney, you remember?
Sure.
Yeah, and he told us something similar about that the only animal, right, the chazir, chews its cud. Excuse me, it has a split hoof but doesn't chew its cud.
Right.
And it's the only animal like that in the world or something. And then he brought a raya, there's something in South America, but that's not considered the world, because the world, the way the Bible understood it was, the known world where they were in or something. You remember something like that, Sydney?
Yeah, I do.
He said something very interesting.
No, but I remember about the Esha Torah thing about the fish also.
But there's no claim in the Torah about something about the chazer. That's just something that is appears to be a metzia, but there's no claim like that in any Mishnah. The chazer is the only one that has split hooves and doesn't chew its cud. There's no claim like that.
Well, I think that because the Torah gave us that example as the only example.
There's no claim, but that's the only one.
Oh, that's the only one. Okay.
By the way, Ernie, so there's four animals the Torah talks about. There's the gamal, the arnevet,
Shafan,
and the chazir. So I once heard from Uri Zohar, who brought that they were intellectual. They were looking for a where that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really gave us the Torah. So they said that the shafan is indigenous to Scandinavia. Moshe Rabbeinu was in Africa and then came to Israel. So when he wrote the Torah, he had no idea about the shafan. And those four animals, those attributes have never changed in world history. Those still remain an absolute. So he said from that raya, they came up that there must be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Moshe Rabbeinu the Torah.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so I think the issue of fish is very important. So we're gonna we'll finish it next week. It talks about, can we buy fish from a non-kosher store and all of that. It's very interesting. And then next week we will begin dam, Hilchos Dam, and Malicha will come in as well. Okay,